Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about, the situation with RFK, Blaha, refined fructose corn syrup, and so we need to have a context for this. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below. If you would drop me a comment also, I would appreciate it so much. Thank you. And I think we need to have a very balanced view on this. For those of us who understand nutrition and nutritional science, we need to be clear on this topic. And I think this upsets a lot of people because they're not understanding. Like when I make this statement, they think that I am in favor of high fructose corn syrup. No, I don't think it should be in food at all. Let me be clear. I don't eat it. I don't buy foods with it. I don't think we should be consuming it. Okay? So let me make that point up front. Okay, before I get further into this conversation, and what I do want to say with this topic is, look, I've been very, very critical personally of RFK's policies on a lot of the nutrition stuff. While by that same token, I will still say I am happy that we at least finally have politicians and leaders trying to have these conversations. So I will give credit for that. Like, let me be clear. I can appreciate the enthusiasm. I can appreciate the effort being put forward. My problem is that what he's doing isn't generally useful or helpful so far. Meaning, this isn't going to make America healthy. I can appreciate the initiative. And I've had some people, like some good friends of mine, who said, but at least he's making progress. How can you say that that's an empty victory? I don't understand. You're against high fructose corn syrup. I am. I'm against all refined sugars for the same reasons. It's not a unique, and I think that's the problem we run into with this conversation. People think that it's actually worse than table sugar or real sugar, as some people are calling it. You might as well just call it real heroin, right? Like, do you want that high fructose heroin or do you want real heroin? I don't think we should be putting either into our body personally. But I digress. Back over to the point. And that is actually an evidence-based position. That's a chemistry and biology-based position. That they're really the same thing. And that's the problem with the entire topic. That's the problem we run into with it, is that we can stand there and say, okay, well, at least the effort's been made. At least we're getting something taken out that's bad. And again, I can appreciate that effort, but you have to understand, if you're taking something bad out and we're simply replacing it with something that is equally bad just because some people and rumors who don't understand the chemistry think it's less bad, doesn't help anything. And I think that's the point why it's an empty victory. We're just going to replace it with table sugar. There's going to be no health benefits. And I'm fully aware people will make these conversations and they'll say, but Jason, it has these other issues. There's all this GMO or more processing. It's more refined. They'll make these arguments. It's like, but that's not evidence that it's worse. Do you understand that? When we start making things like appeal to nature fallacies and things like that without looking at what's happening, okay, without looking at what's happening, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything helpful. And here's what I want to say. First of all, I remember when Dr. Lustig brought this up 15 years ago. He discussed that in Sugar, the Bitter Truth. I recall that. That was a very popular documentary and lecture that was given, very controversial, where he talked about the problems with, refined fructose. And as he pointed out, as a medical doctor who's had plenty of biochemistry, he's like, people are over trying to replace, high fructose corn syrup, or claim it's worse than table sugar. And he's like, but it's not. It's like chemically, he goes, just look at it. He goes, look at the molecules. Look at the molecules, right? Once your stomach acid hits them, you can't tell them apart. Okay, yes, you can tell them apart beforehand. But we need to understand the problem with the high fructose corn syrup is not that it's gone through whatever processing. That's not the actual problem. The problem is the ridiculous amount of free fructose that's in it that hits the upper intestine as soon as it gets the bonds get broken, right? A large amounts of fructose being flooding into your bloodstream in the upper intestine is not a good thing. And I've had people point out, they'll say, but that can cause issues with the liver. And I've had this argument thrown back at me. They're like, but how can you say it's not worse? All that fructose, it will hit the liver. You're going to have large amounts of it reach the liver. It's going to cause potential for fatty liver, potential for elevated triglycerides, potential for insulin resistance. Like, this isn't a good thing. Large amounts of this is a problem. And what they don't understand, he was right. The table sugar, the real sugar, again, it's called sucrose is the chemical name, does the exact same thing in the same amount. Yes, the bond is slightly different in the molecule. It's a slightly different molecule before your stomach acids reach it. Okay? But once they digest it, you can't tell them apart. The difference in total fructose between them that reaches the upper intestine that's free is negligible. Is there a slight difference? Yes, but it's not enough to matter. The impact is the same. In fact, I could make an even worse case for the table sugar. Because it's less sweet, you're going to need slightly more of it to get the same sweetness. So you could potentially, for the same level of sweetness, end up with a higher fructose load into the bloodstream and on the liver. Now, I'm not saying that that it's worse. I'm not saying that. I think they're equal. From a practical perspective, they're equal. We could argue that one is worse than the other because, sure, the high fructose corn syrup has a very small amount of extra fructose. Keep in mind, we're talking a couple percentages. Okay? But we could also argue, well, the sucrose is less sweet, so people are going to use more of it. So we might end up with more. So again, this is tit for tat. Really tit for tat. The end result, our body can't really tell them apart. They process it. Once the stomach acid hits it and it reaches the rest of our GI tract, they are virtually identical. Okay? Now, people say, okay, but that's just looking at the chemistry. What about in the body? Well, that's been studied, and here's what the researchers found. All the negative effects are identical. Like, this was looked at too in the lab. And this is not a case of people saying, oh, this is in defense of high fructose corn syrup. No, this is not in defense of it. It's saying, hey, this is bad. We probably shouldn't be eating this. Right? This is not good for us. What this is saying is that this is not good for us. But table sugar isn't any better. It does the exact same negative things. And it doesn't matter that they derive from a slightly different origin. It doesn't matter that there's a very mildly different chemical structure. Because once we digest, keep in mind, digestion is a chemical process. Once our stomach acids get a hold of it, they become the same substances. Okay, does that make sense? Once our stomach acid hits them, the differences go away. You end up with the same stuff, the same amount of free fructose, a similar fructose to glucose ratio, all that right there, ready to absorb. And it absorbs the same. Okay, as far as your upper intestine and as far as your liver and everything is concerned, they're identical. And that's the problem. That's why this is an empty victory. Okay? All we've done is replace one type of refined fructose with another type of refined fructose. And I think the confusion is the name high fructose corn syrup. That's just that's an industry name. Okay, so they're thinking, oh, well, it must be much, much, much higher. Well, it's not. It's higher fructose than corn syrup that it's derived from because it's been concentrated. But it ends up being very, very similar to table sugar when it's all said and done. Okay, so again, every time you bring this up, people will point out all the problems with high fructose corn syrup. Like, but this and that is why it's worse. But I'm like, but table sugar does the same thing. Right? That's not defending high fructose corn syrup. That's demonizing table sugar. And that's what people don't get. That's like saying, hey, I'm over here smoking blue crack. And I think the red crack isn't as bad. And we go, no, it really is the same. Like red crack and blue crack. As far as your body is concerned, once you've smoked it, the dye goes away, and all that's left is the crack. and it has the same effect. That's not defending the blue crack. That's demonizing both. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.